Thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast series, where we profile those who have overcome or those who are in the process of overcoming any life topic. We have three objectives with this podcast series. Our first objective is we want you to know that whatever you're experiencing in life, whatever you're encountering, you're not alone. We want to join you to let you know that we together can help you through whatever challenge you may have that at the time may seem too difficult to be able to overcome. Our second objective is to help you determine with a very confident resolve there are multiple solutions, multiple factors involved in any life encounter. It's a matter of thinking into and thinking through the life situation you are encountering to determine the various options, the various solutions that are available to you. Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If whatever you're experiencing is a result of a decision you made sometime in the past, such that if you had a life redo, you would make a different decision, we want to help you determine the objective facts and factors to evaluate to help you reach a more informed decision. I'm Ron Cooper, founder of the Cooper Culture. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty. Together, we are the Cooper Culture, and the Cooper Culture is sponsoring this podcast series. Today, we feature Ben Baker on the subject of communication. It's interesting, Marty, that the subject of communication frequently means talking, at least by some people's perspective, but what we discuss in this podcast is more so listening. And listening is an art that some of us need to practice on pretty continuously. It's needed for great connected communication, marriages, anytime you want to connect with a person. Marty, what are some takes our listeners can draw from this podcast?
Ron, Ben gave us many points to consider during communication. The one that I want to bring out that means a lot to me is eye contact, total focus on the one you're talking to so that they know you value them, you value what they have to say, and you're listening to respond to them in an accepting way.
Do I listen well to you?
Sometimes.
Maybe this podcast is for me. Let's all listen together with me listening possibly more intently than you. Ben, thank you for joining us, partner. You have a lot of expertise in communication, and Marty and I, with our business, are trying to help businesses establish and maintain a culture to where communication is one of the foundational aspects of a very healthy, wholesome organization and connected communication where we totally trust each other. But Ben, you have a lot of expertise and experience in communication, and wonder if you could help us in the context of possibly helping businesses who don't have quite the culture of communication that you and I like to help businesses develop. What are some of the challenges businesses have, and how might we help them overcome some of those challenges to have what you and I know to be the very healthy culture, one in which people actually enjoy working? So, Ben, welcome aboard. Good to have you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. First of all, it's a pleasure. We had a great conversation offline, and I think that this is going to be an even more productive conversation in front of the mic. I've been in the communications game for about 25 years now, and one thing I've learned working with large companies, small companies, government, enterprise, whoever, is that we have to listen to each other. We desperately have to listen to each other. Most people listen to, they listen to speak. It's like when you're talking the conversation, you're listening to find the place where you can interject into the conversation, the yes but, and people are constantly sitting there going, but I need to get my point across. And they don't take the time to listen to what the other person is truly saying because they're constantly trying to formulate how they're going to respond to a certain point. And then a lot of the conversation gets missed or misinterpreted because people don't take the time to listen. So I think that is really a cornerstone of great communication, great culture, great companies, great enterprises, great marriages, whatever, is that we need to take the time to stop, actually listen to the full conversation that somebody else is saying, find out what they're saying, why they're saying it, what they're trying to say, make sure that we understand what they're trying to say, and then come back with a response based on having a better understanding of who they are, what they do, and why they do it.
Man, I'm loving what you say. That's harmony to my ears when you say that, Ben. Talk to our listeners about a person who may have the attitude that, well, communication, I mean, that's me talking. And when you talk about listening, that's more like I'm listening to this other person and so forth. I mean, gosh, and you're right, Ben. How am I going to get my point across if all I'm doing is listening? What's the point you're trying to make with the listening part of this?
Well, I mean, it could be anybody. It could be the CEO of the company. It could be any member of the C-suite. It could be senior leadership. It could be junior leadership. It could be people that are working together on the shop floor. Nobody is above being a bad listener, and nobody's above being a great listener. It's something that takes enormous amount of skill. I mean, my current podcast has 270 episodes. Trust me, I'm a far better listener after interviewing 270 people week after week than I was 5 years ago when I started this. And I'll probably be much better at it in another 270 episodes. The difference is that everybody has their own agenda, whether it's overt or invert. People have their own agenda. People have their own wants, needs, fears, their desire to be heard, their desire to be listened to, their desire to feel important and to feel valued. And with that, we all think that we have to continually be talking to get our point across. And I think that we need to sit there and say, wait a second here. People listen to us when we listen to them. When we can have the point of view of saying, listen, let me give this other person the ability to say what they want to say. Let me understand what's bothering them. Let me understand what their goals are, what their aspirations are, what their needs are, and then communicate what mine are. Then we have ability to have a symbiotic conversation. But if we're constantly just trying to get our point across and not caring about what the other person wants, needs, fears, or is motivated by, they're never going to listen to us because they feel that we're not listening to them.
Is there an aspect of listening that says, I care about you, and when the person with whom we're connecting understands clearly that is the heart emotion, that I do want to connect with you, I want to learn who you are? As a leader, Ben, would you say that's one of the very important aspects of very effective leadership, that those with whom we are mentoring, guiding, need to know we care about them, and by caring about them is we genuinely know who they are through listening?
Well, let's attack those as two separate questions. The first thing is, how do you get people to understand that you're listening to them? A lot of it comes down to body language. If you're leaning forward, if you're giving them eye contact, if you're not grabbing your phone and texting while they're talking, if you're actually, nodding when they're talking, when your body language enables them to see that you're actually participating in the conversation, and when you're clarifying, things and say, well, wait a second, what did you mean by that? Well, if you did that, what's the next logical step? And being able to sit there and truly let them get through their entire point of purpose, that enables people to truly believe that you're listening to them. And it's not something that can be faked. You can't fake caring. You can't fake active listening. Either you are or you're not. And, it's something that takes a lot of skill. It's something that takes a lot of patience, and it's something that we all get better at over time. Nobody's very few people are naturally good listeners. I have a few people that I deal with that are extremely focused. When you're in a room with them and you're in a conversation with them, you are the only person that matters, because that's how they make you feel. And I think a lot of it comes from that visceral feeling. did you want to discuss that, or did you want to go on to the whole leadership piece as well?
No, that's fine. Let me just ask you about this part, Ben, that eye contact, leaning forward, terms I use all the time. And active listening, I wasn't sure if that's still a current term, but you'll hear me during this podcast, and I frequently ask people, I think what I hear you saying is, or am I assimilating correctly what you just said, is that a usable part of active listening?
Absolutely, because what you're doing is you're either paraphrasing or you're qualifying. And both of them are excellent. Is qualifying, did you mean this or did you mean that? And if you're asking that question, you actually heard what they had to say. You're just not sure, did they mean it, that we're going right or we're going left? But if you're paraphrasing, so what I heard you say was. So if that's true, where do we go from here? And if you can use those two techniques, you can become a far better listener, because what you're trying to do is let the other person know that, yes, I was listening. Yes, I understood what you had to say. I may not agree with it. And let's put it this way. Empathy is not sympathy. You can empathize with a person. You can understand who they are, what they believe, why they believe it, and you can be adamantly against everything that they stand for. But at least you're in a position of being able to argue against it with the understanding of what their position is.
Very well said. Let me ask you just one more aspect of this part, and I do want to address the leadership. But I think one of the things of active listening is perhaps you, Marty, and I have been a part of a conversation, but just in the listening part of others communicating, and you just discerned that you two are talking past each other, totally past each other, that one of you made a statement and the other person processed that statement totally different from the way it was meant. Is that one thing, that active listening and being, quote, in the moment, leaning forward, eye contact, is that one of the things that can help us to communicate and we are in the moment with each other?
Yeah. I mean, have you ever played the game telephone? Probably a long time ago when you were a kid, where you line up 15, 20, 30 people in a row, you tell the first person this thing, and then you let them tell the same thing to other people, and then you sit at the end of the line and find out what the last person is going to tell you. Well, 9 times out of 10, what you told the first person is certainly not what the 30th person is going to tell you. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that people are augmenting, they are not actively listening, they're paraphrasing, they're interpreting, they're putting their own personal bias attached to it. So you have 30 different people that have listened in their voice, either understood or not understood, maybe haven't clarified, and have not moved on effectively. An effective game of telephone would be to teach people how to actively listen, paraphrase, verify before they move forward to the next person, and do it all within the cone of silence, and then you have a very good chance of getting the 30th person to say what the first person said. But that takes, as I said, that takes a lot of skill, that takes a lot of effort, that takes, within organizations, that takes good leadership, that takes training, and it takes ongoing training. It's not something you can teach people and they're going to pick it up and they're going to be automatically amazing at it. It's something that can take weeks, months, years before people get to a point where they're proficient at that type of listening, and being able to, communicate in a more effective way.
Talk to us about, in the context of leadership, listening, and just how effective or let's say how necessary listening is to letting people know that we are connected with them, we care about them, and maybe tie in body language. That, we sometimes say that, well, if someone's sitting back in their chair, arms folded, maybe that's a visual sign that we are not connecting there, or they're otherwise kind of rejecting what we're saying. But in my perception, listening is the necessary art to great leadership, and I'm very interested in your insights.
Well, let's start off by defining leadership, because I'm a big believer that there's management and then there's leadership. And I love what Simon Sinek says about leadership versus managerial. He tells a story, I think it's in his TED Talk, Start With Why, where he finds a person has been late 5 days in a row. And the manager comes up to that person and says, look, you've been late 5 days in a row. If you're late day number 6, you're fired. That same day, the leader comes up to that same person and says, listen, I noticed you've been late 5 days in a row. Is everything okay? And that's the difference between managing and leadership. You manage process and you lead people. Calling anybody a manager sets them up for failure, because all they're doing then is managing process and not having the ability to lead people. A good leader wakes up every single morning and says, what do I need to do to make my team better, to be able to clear the baffles, to make my team more effective, and give them the tools that they need to succeed. That's what a good leader does. So let's start the process from there. In terms of leadership and listening, leaderships are coaches, they're mentors, they're people that inspire, they're people that communicate goals and what the objectives are and expectations are of the organization to the people that they lead. All of that requires active listening, because first of all, you could have a team of 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 people that you're responsible for. Not two people may not understand the same communication in the same way. Some people like memos, some people like emails, some people like Slack channels, some people want to tweet, some people want to actually have a meeting to talk about it. Some people need more of a visual, some people are more hands-on. Different people learn different ways. And until you can understand as a leader, how does my team understand? How does my team internalize information? How do they recall information? How do they retell it? How do they get to a point where they understand? You can't even start to communicate, because your job as a leader is to make sure that everybody is going to be on the same page. They understand the goals, they understand the expectations, they understand the objectives, and they all are moving forward together. So without effective leadership, and listening within your leadership, you have the inability to communicate effectively.
I'm radically on board with you, Ben, that the difference between leadership and management, you lead people, you manage processes, right on target. Is there an aspect of, I'm going to use the term awareness in the context of communication and learning to know your people and the term care, but is there an aspect, Ben, of let's just say it is just learning to know your people? You mentioned briefly a learning style, the speaking style, but is it a matter of us adapting to them and that being a way to more effectively communicate?
I think we need to adapt to each other. I truly think that we need to adapt to each other. I mean, that's where expectations come in. Most organizations think that expectations go one way. I'm the leader. This is what I expect of you. Do it. And I think we've gotten to a point in time in our lives, in our businesses, where expectations go both ways. Yes, these are the expectations of the company. This is what the company expects of you. This is what we're going to give you. This is how we're going to treat you. And this is, what we need from you to be able to be successful. On the same time, those who are being led need to sit there and say, listen, I need to be listened to, understood, and valued. I need to have a place where I can learn. I have a place where I can grow as a person. I need to feel that the work that I do matters, and I need to know that those who lead me will be there to listen to me and be able to help me achieve my objectives within the company. And I think that it's got to go both ways in today's world. And I think that if we focus on that two-way communication, that two-way expectations, then you can have two-way accountability. Because if you don't have the two-way expectations, if you don't have active listening, if you don't have the ability to understand each other, you're never going to have accountability within the organization, and therefore you're going to have an organization full of chaos.
How would you assess your listening skills? I'm the kind of person that believes that there's no person so good at listening that they can't get better. I also believe that there's no process that is so good that it can't be improved. How about the culture in which you spend much of your time, the workplace, possibly? Would you say that your staff is a good listener because you are a good listener? In the context of leadership, people are generally going to follow their leader, and they're going to be very productive if that leader feels that they can convey care to their staff. How about your home life? How about if you're married? How about your spouse? Do you listen to your spouse? Does your spouse listen to you? Do you each adapt to each other? How would you assess the culture of communication and listening in your environment? If you know of someone who can benefit from this podcast, and I believe everyone could, we hope you'll share this podcast with those that can benefit from this by learning the skill of listening. We look forward to hearing from you and from others who can benefit from this podcast. Let's take the adaptation or the concept of adapting to each other a little bit further. Is that something that I as a leader should be teaching? Is it a matter of culture? Is it both of the above? Is it more? Let's just say that my perception of one or more of my employees is that person does not seem to be doing the two-way adapting. Is it a matter of teaching that person, would you say, Ben, or is it a culture? How does this two-way adapting come about from your experience?
I think it comes away for a lot of things. I think it comes down to open communication between you and the team member. If it's a serious problem with one individual, it needs to be in person, it needs to be behind closed doors, and it needs to be open and honest, depending on how severe the challenge is. If it's a team situation, you need to sit down with the team as individuals and also as a team and sit there and say, okay, what are the challenges that are leading us to have this disconnect? You may need to bring a facilitator in, you may need to bring trainers in, you may need to bring people in that have certain skills that you don't. The problem is with most leaders today is they think they have to know everything. They have to be great at everything, they have to know everything, and they have to be able to do everything. And guess what? That's impossible. It's absolutely impossible for you to be everything to everybody and to be perfect all the time. And the first thing a leader needs to sit there and say is, you know what, I'm not sure, or I don't know. I'm okay with that. Now I have to go find out what the answer is to the problem I have. And if I can't fix this myself, I need to be able to admit that and bring in the people who can. And you know what, it could even be sitting there going, there's somebody on your team who has expertise in an area that you don't. You may not be a specialist in a new software development program that one of your team members is. They may know something about a certain client that you have absolutely no idea about. So sitting there and assuming and making recommendations and goals and dictums when you're not really sure what the real answer is futile. And I think the first thing we need to do as leaders is sit there and say, we're not perfect. Nobody assumes that we're perfect. Nobody thinks we have to be perfect. But we need to be able to sit there and go, you know what, I don't know, but let's find out together. Or I'm going to find out and I'm going to get back to you guys.
Talk to the CEO or any other type of industry leader who is listening to this and says, you're addressing some topics that might be applicable to my group. I just don't know exactly where we are. I have nothing more than a sense that my staff is not communicating as well, not connecting as well, not adapting as you're saying. But I may need an assessment to just see where we are. Do you have an assessment, or is it something you can just sense with a little bit of time in an organization, just how an organization or how the company's organization is and how you may help them get to the next level up of better communication?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say to a leader that has that gut feeling is good for you. Good for you for not ignoring it. Good for you for not sweeping it under the rug. Good for you for not, minimizing it. Because if you're feeling this way, it's probably true. And you're right. We may not know what it is. And 9 times out of 10, I can't walk into an office the first day and say, oh, it's that. That's the problem right there. If we switch this from the on to the off switch, we're going to be just fine. 99.9% of the time, it doesn't work that way. Assessments work in a lot of different ways. Yes, there are online assessments, and we work with a bunch of them. And what they do is they give you a good baseline. The problem is getting people to understand why they're taking the assessment in the first place. If you can't sit there and say, we're going to take this assessment, we're going to run our people through this, and we want to change as an organization, and we're willing to put the money, the time, and the expertise behind this in order to change, then don't do it. If you just want to run an assessment, see where you are, and then do nothing about it, you've made the situation worse. Now, but if you're willing to sit there and say, look, we know we have a problem, we don't know what it is, we know that the assessment's going to cost us this much, but that's going to be 5% of what we're going to put towards solving this problem, then you're probably in a good position, because these things are ongoing, they take time, and especially when you're dealing with culture change does not happen overnight. It happens over months and years, and it takes a lot of individual effort and it takes a lot of group effort to be able to make it work. But in terms of assessments, the first thing that we do, besides taking a look at an online assessment that sits there and takes a look at the psychological health and the cultural health of the organization, is we'll come in and we'll do an assessment that I call a branding exercise, where we'll bring in a graphic recorder, those people that stand behind you and draw the cartoons of what's being said behind you. And I'll separate people out by division, legal team, operations team, marketing team, sales team, legal team, whatever. And we'll separate them and we'll talk to them about the brand. Where did you start as a company? Why was this company started? Where are you today? What got you from that point to this point? Who are your top customers? Why do they love you? What are the things that make you different in the company? And we go through a lot of different questions that talk about where you were, where you are, and where you're going. And we have it graphically recorded. And usually what we do is we take all these graphic recordings, we put them up on a wall somewhere in an office, and we have the executive team come in, and 9 times out of 10, the images don't match each other. The story doesn't match each other. Therefore, people don't understand what the brand, what the mission, what the vision, what the values of the company is, what your goals, what your aspirations, and what you really do and who you do it for. And until you can understand all those things as an organization and everybody's on the same page, it's very difficult to change.
I love what you said, that the culture and the effective communication is not a one-time assessment, one-time shot. Is it fair to say from your experience that it is a continuous, intentional effort, that there is no, we frequently use the term journey, there's no destination. It is a continuous process with everyone, with all the people in your organization are growing, if that's the culture that you've established.
Yeah, the journey ends the day the company ends and ceases to exist. Either it goes out of business or it folds for one way, shape, or form. That's when the journey ends, and that's when the process ends. Up to that date, your brand changes, it evolves, your culture changes, it evolves, your purpose remains fairly constant, but it will evolve and change over time. A perfect example is pre-COVID, during COVID, past COVID. COVID is going to be a watershed moment in a lot of companies' lives, and things are going to change. It doesn't define who the company is, but because they went through COVID and because of the unique experiences that company went through during COVID, their experiences and how they do business and who they do business for and what's important to them and why will have changed moving forward. So companies really need to know now, and this is a great time to be doing this, to going back and understanding what has changed, why, what's different with our processes, what's different with our procedures, what's different with our culture and our people, and be able to re-onboard people so people understand where you're going instead of focusing on where you've been.
That's right on. I think a great segue into what could be another version, another episode of communication is COVID. Nearly every business is going through some sort of transition with COVID. Many used to meet in an office however many times, and now people are operating out of the house. How do we continue that effective communication, and how do we adapt to the environment. In my perspective, and I suspect, Ben, you're exactly the same way, it doesn't matter what's happening on the outside. Everything is an opportunity. We just need to adjust and adapt to it. But with the right thinking, the right mindset, we will adjust to whatever's happening. We're never a victim of the external circumstances. Everything's an opportunity.
Well, I mean, you need to take a look at the individual businesses. You're going to have teams that are going to remain in the office and have remained in the office. I think of manufacturing and warehousing, logistics being, people like that. You're going to have people that are going to, continue to remain remote and may stay remote the rest of their lives. And then you're going to have people that are going to be hybrid teams where people are going to, be out of the office a couple days of the week, in the office a couple days of the week. And all three of those situations may happen at the exact same time within the same company. And leaders need to sit there and, first of all, say, look, we need to look at a different way of running this company and a different way of communicating, a different way of leadership to understand that because of this watershed moment, how we did things in the past, our playbook, our policies, our procedures, our communication methods need to change in order to be more effective. In terms of leadership and communication, you need to sit there and say, how do people need to be communicated with? How often do people need to be communicated with? It comes down to back to the two-way expectations. Some people that are remote are going to want, daily, sometimes daily communication with people, where some people are just going to say, you know what, if you talk to me as a leader twice a month and leave me to do what I knew, and I know what my expectations, I know what you expected me, I know what our goals are, I know what I'm supposed to achieve, and just let me do it, then that's just fine. But if you're going to run into cultural challenges when you're going to have out of sight, out of mind, and it's not easy, and it needs to be focused on, and every single company needs to sit there and say, what's best for our people? How do we move forward that's best for our people? And that really comes down to group communication, group discussions, and individual conversations. And not everybody is going to be happy with all decisions, but sooner or later, somebody has to make a decision. This is the way that we're moving forward. But the thing is that you, as a leader, if you decide this is the way we're moving forward, you need to let people know why. They need to know why we're moving forward in this way. If all of a sudden you decide, listen, we need to have everybody that works inside the office vaccinated, or else you can't come into the office, there needs to be justification as to why do it. You can't just assume everybody understands it. You need to be able to sit there and say, why have we come to this decision, and what does this mean for our culture? And that may not seem like a big thing, but it's a huge thing. And there's 1,000 other decisions that fall into that same category that we need to assess. What worked in 2019 probably is not going to work in 2022, and we need to readjust.
And that is the type of adaptation I'm referring to, Ben. I think that's a great segue to a possible follow-on episode, or maybe multiple episodes, how for the CEO, for the company leader, listening to this and saying, yep, you're talking exactly what I need to hear, and that person wants to know more about adapting to the various segments of companies that we're dealing with, and how do we adapt to the changing environment. Just as you said, what worked in 2019 is not necessarily and probably won't work in 2022. We just need to be adaptive. It does involve leadership, but it involves knowing our people. Ben, would you be available for a future date for an episode where we talk about how to adapt our communication to the various changing environments?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I mean, let me give you one snippet just to give you an idea of one thing that can be doing. We do a lot of internal podcasts for large to enterprise level organizations where, we have organizations that have 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 employees across various states, across different countries, around the world. And we produce internal podcasts for these companies that once a week, different people within the organization, sometimes it's the CEO, sometimes it's sales, sometimes it's ops, sometimes it's legal, sometimes it's HR, sit on the mic with me. And what we do is we talk about, purpose and culture issues, change management, new products that are coming into things, different changes that are going on within the company. And because it's, first of all, behind closed doors and on a secure server, they don't have to worry about this information getting out in public. And second of all, because it's asynchronous, people can listen to it when it's convenient for them. Because 10,000 employees across 15 different time zones, there's no way that you can have a time that works for everybody to hear all the information at the same time. This allows you to hear the information in the voice of the people that are actually making the decisions and are actually involved in the process, and be able to ask them questions directly in an asynchronous manner, and be able to stir the conversation, to be able to enable people to break down silos and to have far more effective communication. So that's one of the things that we do for companies.
And I think that is the type thing that many of our listeners, we are stimulating their thinking, Ben, and I think as we present ideas, we'll be able to help those people to connect with the idea that'll work best with their people. For those who would like to contact you directly, is there a way that you would not mind putting on this podcast how to do that?
No, absolutely. There's a couple different ways you get in touch with me. The best way is through my website, which is yourbrandmarketing.com. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. People can, at the top right-hand corner is my email, and my phone number is at the top right-hand. People can call me. They can do that. They can book an appointment, over Zoom. I'm always happy to give people a free half hour to sit there and talk about their organization and find out, if I can help them, and if we can help them, how we can work together. So probably the yourbrandmarketing.com is the best way for people to get in touch with me.
Great. Well, Ben, let's continue the dialogue through subsequent podcasts. There are a lot of our listeners who are stimulated by the ideas that we can help them generate, and we can help them implement various ideas. Thanks for joining us, Ben.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Let's share with each other what the lessons are we've learned through communication, learned from communication. What are some attributes that you have overcome? What are some attributes that you've learned from? How have you perfected the art of communication? I am the believer that everything can and will always be improved. The worst communication I have is the last conversation. Hopefully everything that I do is getting better all of the time. I am working with some people who have literally expressed their dismay that we feel that we're not listening to them. I'm not an advocate that what we hear from others we must enact, such as the younger people who have lesser life and work experience than we. I am not an advocate that we must implement what it is they say. However, I think it's very incumbent on us as good leaders, effective communicators, to listen to other people, to want to genuinely understand where they're coming from. And if they have an idea that we don't think is worthy of taking forward, I think a part of connected communication and listening is to say that I've evaluated what you said. I appreciate your thinking into this. We've decided not to implement because, and then you explain the reasons for that. When you do that and have that approach with people, people walk away from a conversation thinking, those who are rational thinking, I guess maybe I should add that, are going to say that they at least gave me the consideration of evaluating my suggestion. I feel that I know they listened to me and gave me a fair shot. I do understand there are going to be some people who feel they must demand their way, and I'm not advocating that we acquiesce to those people, but I do believe that we need to listen to them. And for those who may not have adapted the listening skills, I do believe that we as leaders, as we exemplify these good listening skills, others might choose to follow us. Share with us, engage with us. Let us know what you're learning from this podcast, what you have learned from life experience. things that you can pass on to others from which we can all benefit and we can advance others. Call us at 410-586-1875 or send an email message to ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at thecooperculture.com. Ben listed his website and is available to talk with you as well. We want to do what we can to help advance you, your organization, your marriage, whatever level of connected relationship you want. We believe that there are communication skills that must be applied and must be applied diligently and with intention. And when we do that, we will have connected communications. We will have relationships that are trustful, loyal, and we're able to be honest with each other. When we have that level of connectedness and communication, we can very freely share ideas and know that nothing will come between us, that our friendship, our loyalty will continue. We look forward to sharing with you. We hope you'll engage. We hope we can warrant a 5-star rating, that you'll want to subscribe to this podcast series, share with others who can benefit from this podcast, and let's engage together. We look forward to working with you.